Higgin to the foster parents' home to see if I could see little Destiny, and Jim and Kelly, they answered the door where the little Destiny was staying, and as they approached the door, I asked Jim if he'd made false allegations against me while Beth was in the park nursing her baby, and Jim said no, he'd never made any allegations against me. And as we were talking and stuff, they kind of hill me there on the property. As Jim went inside and locked the door, and Kelly came out onto the porch and says, "Well, how long have you known Jim?" And I says, "Well, we worked maybe 7 or 8 years at Maine General as he worked in phlebotomy." And she says, "Well, if you knew Jim so well, how come you never come up here to visit again?" And after a while, the police officer came. And before the police officer came, Nicole, a DHS worker, shows up on the property, and she kind of holds me there talking to me on the property until the police officer comes. And she's asking me my name and my date of birth and all of this on the phone while she's talking to the police officer on his radio in the car before he arrives. And then he arrives on the property. He says, "I'm going to have to write you up for trespassing on this person's property." And so I walk out, and I'm standing in the middle of the street when the officer comes, so now I'm no longer on the property. And he says, "Well, you stay right here by the trunk of my car while I write you up for trespassing on this man's property." And the way I see it was DHS came there because they were called by Jim while he was in the house. His wife kept me on the steps talking to me till DHS Nicole arrived. And then the officer came and wrote me up on the trunk of his car for trespassing. And I don't believe I should have been written up for trespassing because there was no sign on the property, and I think it was totally illegal for me to be written up for trespassing on that man's property. And even the lawyer told me, he says, "Well, if they're going to do that to you, he said a traveling salesman couldn't even work in this area. He'd be held on the property and written up every time."
Charlie. So in other words, Charlie, once Jim closed the door and went
Yes.
inside and locked the door,
Yes.
his wife had come out before he locked the door. Am I correct?
Right, right.
And then she engaged you in conversation
Right,
until a DHS worker arrived,
right.
in which she also engaged you in a conversation.
Until the police officer arrived.
Okay, well, my next question is this. At any point, did the lady that lived at the house ask you to leave?
No, at no point was
At no
I
point
asked.
was you never were asked to leave at any point?
No, I was never asked to leave the property.
So they merely...
Until the officer come, and he said, and then he wrote me up, and then he says, "Now you'll have to leave the property and don't ever come back."
Well, and you did leave, didn't you?
Right.
You, as soon as he said that, you went to the street.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, another thing that bothers me is a week later in Skowhegan at a team meeting for Beth and her child Destiny, Jim and Kelly make accusations against me that I could have been carrying a gun or a knife as I approached their house and answered the door. If that was the case, why didn't he tell the police officer that when he was writing me up and telling me to get off the property?
Another thing that bothers me is that the DHS immediately put my baby in with strangers, foster parents, and I did tell them that I have a sister, lives in New York who has a top security clearance. She's in the military, and they don't want to send her there, the baby, because they say it's out of state and then there's no reunification. I won't be able to see my baby at all. But I found out later that there's not even a reunification plan at all right now in place. And then I have a friend of mine who is a foster parent in Benton, but she's also my landlord. And we become very good friends, and DHS doesn't want to move my baby with her because they say it's a conflict of interest. And lastly, I have another woman who is a really good friend of mine. She's almost like a mother to me. And she's seen me, I've lived with her after my baby was born for a few months. And she knows what kind of a mother I am. She knows what kind of a person I am. I've known her for 2 years. And DHS won't move the baby with her either because they claim that she lied to them about something. And I just like to see children go with family members. If they're going to do this sort of thing, the family should come first.
What has struck me in this is, if Beth is a child molester, why would she want people to know what is going on? By the same token, if Beth really is molesting her child, why is Child Protective trying to keep everything a secret? In all fairness to the Department of Health and Human Services, they are a large agency that does a good many things for many people. I'm sure that Child Protective even saves many children from real abuse. It often seems, however, that they often become overzealous and miss the mark. What is needed here is true justice. I was also shown a letter from a licensed social worker who examined Beth and found her to be under a great deal of stress. After all, who wouldn't be if their child was just taken away? The social worker, however, found no serious mental or emotional disorders that would warrant her child to be taken away, and recommended a program to reunite her with her child destiny as soon as possible. The excerpts which I just read to you from a letter from a licensed social worker and counselor definitely show that Beth, though she'd had troubles in the past, and this letter explains that, does tell you that Beth is not requiring any special treatment for any serious psychological or mental problems. Perhaps it's important that I read to you the entire letter which was written to Beth's attorney, Brian Condon, and therefore I will just go right into reading the letter, and you can form your own opinion as to whether or not the Child Protective Services were justified in their actions. Here is a letter. It was written on 7/5/12. That was just a little short while ago. Dear Attorney Condon, it has been my pleasure to work with our mutual client, Beth Redamozo, since May of 2011. Beth was self-referred to this clinic for outpatient mental health treatment and for help with a child custody case. Initially, I diagnosed Beth with an unspecified adjustment disorder and rule out post-traumatic stress disorder. Beth and I have met approximately an hour each week for outpatient treatment over the past year. During that time, I've come to the conclusion that Beth does not have a major mental illness that requires treatment. As I listened to her history, I became convinced that she had continued several coping strategies largely developed in her family of origin. Beth was taught to trust others' opinions more than her own. During her childhood, she was taught that she could not trust her own opinions, her own thoughts, and her own feelings. In addition, she was criticized much of the time and not given the kind of positive support that would later allow her to make her own decisions with confidence. Consequently, as a young adult, she developed relationships with people that treated her poorly. Beth is a survivor of domestic abuse, emotional neglect, in a highly critical environment, both from at least one parent and then later, quite naturally, in the relationships that she developed as a young woman. Beth is a good example of how, as adults, we tend to carry out the survival strategies we learn in family origin, whether those strategies are helpful to us or not. Since Beth and I have worked together, I have watched her grow and flower from a person who was terribly unsure of herself and the legitimacy of her own being in the world, begun to realize that there was nothing wrong with her emotionally or cognitively, and that she is a good person as well as a capable and loving parent. In my clinical opinion, whatever depression, poor self-esteem, or self-doubt may have been there with Beth is entirely attributable to environmental factors. There is nothing about her that suggests a biologically based, emotionally or cognitive problem. In addition, there is no significant history of head trauma. I have met two of her children, now in the custody of Beth's mother. Beth and I have had many sessions with her youngest child, Destiny. Although I am not an expert in parenting competency, I will say that every time that I have seen Beth with her children, she parents them appropriately. She is tolerant of their behavior and patient with them, but when it comes time to set firm limits, Beth does so. My observation is that her children trust her and are not afraid of her. They speak openly to her, they ask questions, and as all children, they push to find limits. I would expect to see more disturbed behavior in the children if Beth was not a capable parent. When I think now about my initial diagnosis, I would say that whatever difficulties Beth may have had in the world as a teenager and as a young mother were directly attributable to experiences within family of origin and later some poor social choices based on her early training. Over the last year, Beth has demonstrated to me that she is a highly capable and well-functioning adult person who always has the welfare of her children as her first priority. I am very pleased that Beth has gained confidence in herself and her ability to make good decisions, and I am happy to report that she is beginning to see some of the potential that I saw as far back as a year ago. Beth has been through an ordeal with the Maine Department of Health and Human Services in their Child Protective Investigation. It is my sincere belief that dhhs is being unjust and unfair in this investigation. While their intention to protect Beth's children is sincere, I firmly believe that their methods are often inappropriate and have been largely damaging to Beth and to her children. I see no good reason for keeping Beth and her children separated. My recommendation is that family unification efforts should begin as soon as possible and continue until Beth and her children are fully reunited. I would be pleased to appear in court as a witness on Beth's behalf, as I've told her several times. I will also be glad to speak with you on the phone at any time. Please feel free to call me at one of the above telephone numbers at your convenience. Thank you for your considerations in this matter. Sincerely, Don Acorn, licensed social worker and counselor. After hearing this, I'm quite sure that there are many women out there who have probably had some kind of problem with the Child Protective Services, part of the Department of Health and Human Services, and you may feel a little sympathetic towards Beth's plight, and possibly you may be having troubles right now in the same areas. If you feel that you might have some common bond with Beth, I think she would like to be in touch with you, and you might like to be in touch with her. I think if enough women get united in this effort, they might be able to do something about it, and maybe get the Department of Health and Human Services to lighten up a little bit in their overzealous investigations. If you'd like to contact Beth, she can be reached at 347 359 2642. And of course, I'm revealing this number below my image. Please do try to contact Beth, or if you feel shy about that, you can contact me, Pete C. Royce, at Maine Social Justice. My number is 696-3230. And good luck to all the people out there who have had trouble with not only the DHS, but also any other government agencies which you feel have been overbearing in their treatment of you.